The Institute for Public Relations interviewed 25 senior communication executives about their internal communication efforts. They put together transcripts, and we did a text analysis and axial coding I did of the reports to come up with some major themes. So the report itself is divided into 3 pieces. The first part is forces shaping the future of work. The second part is who are you communicating to a new workforce? And part 3 is planning for the future of work. Now you would think I would just organize my presentation around these 3 things, but of course no, I didn't do that because I want you to go read the full report. The full report results are really valuable and a good use of your time because what I'm going to do today is really give you some of the highlights. Highlights that cover 3 interlinked dimensions of work: the who, the what, and the where. Or the who, the workforce; the what, the work itself; and the where, the workplace. And so how are those things changing? What disruptions are happening across those 3 interlinked dimensions? And what did our communicators give us advice on how to handle these or raise even more questions in some circumstances? According to a McKinsey study, 375 million workers, or roughly 14% of the entire workforce, may need to switch occupational categories because of these technological innovations. And it's not that executives are blind to this. Executives are actually increasingly investing in retaining and upskilling and reskilling workers. Now, if that's jargon to you, I'll tell you what those words really mean. Upskilling is teaching workers to do the same job in a different way. So learning new skills, for instance, how to operate a robot. Whereas reskilling is they are teaching them how to do a completely different job, so new skills for a new job. So we talk about a lot of upskilling and reskilling. That's what those terms refer to. Some 66% of executives, I don't have my notes right here, but some 66% of executives said this is in their top 10 priorities, retraining, and it was some 33% who said it was in their top 5 priorities of the same study. So here we have an example. So speaking of this, where are these categories? This was the McKinsey study, and they, off the top of my head, they categorized 2,000 work activities across 800 occupations, the time spent across all those occupations on these work activities that they collapsed then and aggregated into these 7 categories, right? So in the left column, we have the time spent across all occupations on these activities. And the right column, the automation potential, so the potential for these to become automated. You'll see that managing and developing people is the smallest time spent across all occupations, but also the smallest for automation potential. So when we think about our own jobs as communicators, as strategic communicators, then managing and developing people, interfacing with stakeholders, expertise in decision-making, planning, and creative tasks are more falling into what our own careers would look like, as opposed to those that have the greatest potential for automation, which are collecting data, processing data, performing physical activities, and operating machinery in predictable environments. Also, you'll notice there's also operating machinery in unpredictable environments. I want you to note that because I have a note about that later. So interestingly, these are all this just speaks to the large amount of the work that's changing, right? That will become automized or digitized, and that will need to, workers will need to be retrained or upskilled in order to perform. Here's another McKinsey study, and I think it's a little easier to digest when we start thinking about it in this way. We're talking about 5 categories of skill sets. Those skill sets are physical and manual skills, basic cognitive skills. We have higher cognitive skills, social and emotional skills, and technological skills. When we're thinking about this, we can think about the physical and manual skills and the basic cognitive skills as those who will be most likely affected. So that would be some assembly line workers, cashiers, such as in the case of my coffee today, drivers, such as in the case of the self-driving automobiles. We can look, and they forecast, it's a longitudinal study, so looking over 2002 to 2030, we can see what the forecast of the % of time that will be spent in each of these categories. So again, for us, just thinking of our own profession, social and emotional skills and higher cognitive skills, so creative thinking, decision-making, critical thinking, that's where those are falling. And in fact, as a side note, one of the, that just came to mind, one of the new hiring hiring criteria was less about the way that our senior communicators were wanting to hire was less about can you write a great press release and more about do you have good leadership, decision-making, critical thinking skills. And so they were began looking for more generalist roles than what they had previously looked for. So the work. So more than the technology though, more than all these technologies that we're talking about, the key issue that came up over and over again was the actual pace of the change and how unprecedented the pace of change is. It's difficult if we talk about organizational culture, if we talk about just employee communication, keeping employees updated, the pace of change is happening so rapidly that the senior communicators said that that was one of the major issues, is just keeping up with the change.